How could my own home become a stranger's property overnight? The question echoed in my mind before I even knew to ask it. I'd spent the entire drive replaying memories, my mother's laughter in the kitchen, the creak of the old stairs, the scent of lilacs from the backyard. I'd imagined stepping through the front door and being wrapped in the warmth of familiarity, the comfort of belonging. Instead, as I pulled into the driveway, I saw a moving van parked at the curb, its ramp stretching like a tongue into my past. At first, I thought maybe my brother had finally decided to clear out the garage, or perhaps my mother had hired help to declutter. But as I walked up the path, suitcase in hand, I noticed the front door wide open, voices echoing from inside, voices I didn't recognize. My heart skipped, then stumbled. I hesitated on the threshold, peering in. Strangers, 3 of them, bustling through the living room, their arms full of boxes. My boxes. The faded blue one with my childhood trophies, the battered suitcase with my high school yearbooks. A woman in a crisp blouse was taping up a box labeled kitchen glassware. A man, tall and broad-shouldered, was stacking framed photos, my family photos, into a crate. "Excuse me." My voice came out thin, uncertain. "What are you doing in my house?" The woman barely glanced at me. "We're almost done with the main floor. If you have anything fragile, let us know now." I stepped inside, the familiar floorboards groaning under my feet. "This is my home. Who are you?" The man set down the crate and looked at me, his expression unreadable. "We bought this place last week. The sale went through." "Didn't anyone tell you?" The words hit me like a slap. "Bought, sold." My mind raced, searching for logic, for some explanation that made sense. There must be a mistake. "My family owns this house. My mother." He cut me off, his tone flat. "You need to leave. We have a schedule to keep." Panic clawed at my chest. I demanded answers, my voice rising, but they just turned away, their faces cold and closed. I stood there, surrounded by strangers packing up my life, and realized I was utterly, terrifyingly alone. My hands trembled as I fumbled for my phone, desperate for a lifeline. I dialed my brother first, then my mother, then my aunt, each call tumbling straight to voicemail. The familiar ringtones, once comforting, now sounded like a countdown to disaster. I left frantic messages, my voice cracking, begging someone, anyone, to explain what was happening. But the silence on the other end was as cold as the stranger's stares. Inside, the new owners moved with mechanical efficiency, boxing up decades of my family's life as if it were nothing more than clutter. I tried to steady my breath, to anchor myself in the details. The faded wallpaper my mother had chosen, the dent in the banister from when I'd tumbled down the stairs as a child, the sunbeam that always fell across the living room rug in the late afternoon. These were the things that made this house a home, my home. I forced myself to confront the woman in the crisp blouse, my voice shaking but determined. "There's been a mistake. My mother would never sell this house without telling me." "Please just give me a moment to call her." She cut me off, her tone clipped and businesslike. "We have all the paperwork. The sale is final. If you have questions, you should speak to your family." I stared at her, searching for a glimmer of empathy, but her eyes slid away. She reached into a folder and handed me a thick envelope. "Here. This was left for you." I tore it open, my heart pounding. Inside was a legal notice, stamped and notarized, with my mother's signature at the bottom. The words blurred as I tried to make sense of them. Transfer of property, outstanding debts, sale finalized. My mother's handwriting, so familiar, so intimate, looked foreign on the cold official document. It was as if she'd signed away not just the house, but every memory, every piece of our shared history. I stumbled outside, clutching the notice to my chest. The air felt heavier, the sky grayer. Across the street, Mrs. Patel stood watering her roses, her eyes fixed on me with a mixture of pity and curiosity. Next door, Mr. Evans paused mid-rake, his brow furrowed. I could feel their judgment, their whispered questions. Had I done something wrong? Was I the black sheep finally cast out? I wanted to scream, to run back inside and barricade myself in my old bedroom, to turn back time to when life was simple and safe. Instead, I sank onto the front steps, the legal notice crumpling in my fist. The contrast between the warmth of my childhood memories and the icy reality of the present was almost too much to bear. I stared at the paper, willing it to make sense, to offer some loophole or explanation. But all I saw was my mother's signature, looping and elegant, sealing my fate. I wondered what could have possibly driven her to this. What secret? What desperation? What betrayal? As the moving van rumbled to life and the strangers continued their work, I realized I was no longer just losing a house. I was losing the foundation of my identity, the story I'd always believed about my family. And as the neighbors watched in silent judgment, I couldn't help but wonder, what was my family hiding from me? It took hours for my brother to finally answer. By then, the sun was sinking behind the rooftops, casting long shadows across the street. I'd paced the sidewalk so many times that my legs ached, my mind spinning with every possible explanation. When his name finally flashed on my screen, I snatched up the phone, hope and dread warring in my chest. Ethan, thank God. You have to tell me what's going on. There are strangers in the house, our house. They say they bought it. I have a legal notice with Mom's signature. What happened? There was a pause, just long enough for me to hear the faint clatter of dishes in the background, the distant hum of a television. When he spoke, his voice was flat, almost bored. I figured you'd find out eventually. The house is gone, Anna. It's been sold. His words landed like a punch. Sold? Without even telling me? How could Mom? He sighed, the sound heavy with irritation. It wasn't my idea. Mom's debts were out of control. Medical bills, the mortgage, credit cards. She was drowning. We didn't have a choice. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear, my voice trembling. But why didn't anyone call me? I could have helped. I had a right to know. He let out a short, humorless laugh. You haven't been around, Anna. You left. You made your choice years ago. The accusation stung, sharp and unfair. Yes, I'd moved away for work, for a fresh start. But I'd always called, always sent cards and gifts, always tried to stay connected. I'd never imagined that distance could erase me from my own family's story. Where's Mom? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Another pause. She's in a care facility. She had a fall a few months ago. It's complicated. She's not herself anymore. The world seemed to tilt beneath me. And no one thought to tell me? Not even a text? He bristled. It's been hard enough without you swooping in at the last minute, acting like you care. I did what I had to do. The house is gone. It's over. I felt the last thread of hope snap. The house, my mother, my place in the family, all gone, all decided without me. The unity I'd always believed in, the idea that family meant loyalty and love, had been replaced by cold practicality and secrets. I was an outsider in my own life. Ethan, I don't understand. Why would Mom sign the house away? She always said it would be ours, that we'd keep it in the family. He hesitated, and for a moment I thought I heard a flicker of guilt. She wasn't thinking straight. The bills kept piling up. The social worker said it was the best option. I couldn't handle it all on my own. I wanted to scream, to demand why he hadn't reached out, why he'd let me be blindsided like this. But all that came out was a choked, "You should have told me." He was silent for a long moment. Look, Anna, it's done. There's nothing you can do now. Just let it go. Let it go. As if I could simply walk away from the only home I'd ever known, from the mother who'd raised me, from the brother who now sounded like a stranger. The betrayal burned in my chest, hot and raw. I realized then that I'd been erased, not just from a decision, but from the very fabric of my family. But I wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. I wiped my eyes, steeling myself. I'm coming to see Mom. I need to hear it from her. He sighed again, softer this time. Do what you want, but don't expect any miracles. As the call ended, I stared at the darkening sky, the ache of abandonment settling deep in my bones. Family was supposed to be forever, a safe harbor in the storm. Instead, I'd been cast adrift, left to navigate a sea of secrets and lies on my own. But what if this was only the beginning? The next morning I woke with a heaviness in my chest that felt almost physical. Sleep had been fitful, haunted by dreams of empty rooms and locked doors. But beneath the ache of betrayal, a new resolve had taken root. I needed answers, and I needed to see my mother. The care facility was on the edge of town, tucked behind a row of maple trees just beginning to turn gold. I'd always imagined visiting a place like this would be a comfort. Gentle nurses, soft music, sunlight streaming through the windows. Instead, the halls were quiet, the air tinged with antiseptic and something older, sadder. I signed in at the front desk, my hands clammy, and followed a nurse down a corridor lined with faded family photos and paper flowers. My mother's room was small but tidy, a vase of wilting carnations on the nightstand. She looked smaller than I remembered, her hair thinner, her skin almost translucent. But when she saw me, her eyes brightened, and for a moment, I saw the woman who used to chase me through the backyard, laughing. "Anna," she whispered, her voice raspy but clear. "You came." I sat beside her, taking her hand in mine. "Of course I came, Mom. I wish I'd known sooner. Why didn't anyone tell me you were here?" She squeezed my fingers, her grip surprisingly strong. "I didn't want you to worry. You have your own life now." Tears pricked my eyes, but I blinked them away. "I came home yesterday. The house, it's gone, Mom. Strangers were packing up our things. They said you sold it." Her face crumpled, and for a moment she looked impossibly old. "I had to, Anna, the bills. I couldn't keep up. Ethan said it was the only way." I tried to keep my voice steady, but the hurt slipped through. "Why didn't you call me?" "I could have helped. I would have helped." She looked away, her gaze fixed on the window. I was ashamed. "I didn't want you to see me like this, but there's something you need to know." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Years ago, after your father died, I made a will. I hid it in the house in case anything ever happened to me. I wanted to protect you, Anna. I wanted you to have a choice. A will." The word hung in the air, heavy with possibility and regret. "Where, Mom? Where did you hide it?" She closed her eyes, searching her memory. "The attic, behind the old cedar chest. I wrote everything down, Anna. I wanted to make sure you'd be taken care of no matter what." My heart pounded. All this time, while I'd been left in the dark, my mother had tried to shield me in her own way. The anger and sadness twisted together, sharp and bittersweet. "Why didn't you tell me before?" She opened her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I thought I had more time. I thought I could fix things before you found out." I brushed her hair back gently, swallowing my own tears. "I'm going to find it, Mom, I promise. I'll set things right." She smiled, a flicker of hope lighting her face. "You always were the strong one." As I left her room, my mind raced with questions. What secrets did my mother hide, and why? And what would I find waiting for me in the shadows of my childhood home? The house felt like a hollow shell when I returned, stripped of its warmth and clutter, echoing with the ghosts of laughter and arguments and lullabies. The new owners had left the doors unlocked, the last of their boxes stacked by the curb, as if the place itself was eager to be rid of its memories. I stepped inside, the air thick with dust and the faint scent of lemon polish, and for a moment I just stood there, letting the silence settle around me. I made my way upstairs, each step creaking beneath my weight, and paused at the attic door. As a child, the attic had been a place of mystery and adventure, a forbidden kingdom where I'd built forts out of old quilts and listened to my mother's stories about her own childhood. Now it felt like the final frontier, the last place where the truth might still be hiding. The attic was dim, lit only by a single window streaked with grime. The cedar chest sat in the far corner, just as my mother had said, its brass handles tarnished with age. I knelt beside it, running my fingers over the lid, and was hit by a wave of memories. My mother's gentle hands braiding my hair, her voice low and secretive as she told me, "Always trust your instincts. Anna, sometimes the things we hide are the things we need most." I opened the chest. half expecting to find nothing but moth-eaten blankets and forgotten toys. But as I dug through the layers, I found a faded envelope tucked beneath a stack of old linens. My breath caught. I tore it open, but it was only a bundle of photographs, my parents on their wedding day, my brother and I as children, all of us smiling, oblivious to the storms that would come. Frustration welled up inside me. I searched every inch of the chest, then the floorboards, then the dusty shelves lining the walls. Each time I found nothing, the weight of disappointment grew heavier. I could almost hear my brother's voice in my head, telling me to let it go, to stop chasing ghosts. But then, as I leaned back against the wall, something shifted beneath my hand. The panel felt loose. Heart pounding, I pried it open, revealing a narrow compartment hidden in the beams. Inside was a battered metal box, locked but not secure. My hands shook as I forced it open. There it was, my mother's will, yellowed with age but unmistakably real. I scanned the first page, my eyes widening as I read the words. She had named me as the sole heir to the house and everything in it. Not Ethan, not anyone else. Me. Beneath the will was a stack of letters tied together with a faded blue ribbon. I hesitated, then untied them, my curiosity burning. The letters were written in my mother's hand, addressed to me but never sent. As I read, the story of a decades-old family feud unfolded, a bitter rift between my mother and her sister, my aunt, over money and trust. My mother had feared that if anything happened to her, the family would try to take everything, leaving me with nothing. The will was her way of protecting me, of making sure I had a home no matter what. I sat back on my heels, the truth settling over me like a heavy blanket. My mother had tried to shield me, even as she kept me in the dark. And my brother, he must have known. He must have found the will and chosen to ignore it, to sell the house anyway, to keep me out of the decision entirely. A cold anger began to simmer in my chest, mingling with the ache of betrayal. I had been erased not by accident but by choice. My own family had decided I didn't matter. But why did my brother hide this from me? I drove to Ethan's apartment with the will and letters clutched in my bag, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. The city blurred past, but my mind was sharp, focused, replaying every word of my mother's will, every line of those heartbreaking letters. I was done being left out, done being the quiet sister who let things happen to her. I was going to get answers, no matter how much it hurt. Ethan opened the door with a look of surprise that quickly soured into wariness. He was still in his work clothes, sleeves rolled up, a tiredness in his eyes that I might have pitied once. But not now. We need to talk, I said, pushing past him into the living room. My voice was steady, stronger than I felt. He closed the door behind me, arms crossed. If this is about the house, Anna, I already told you. I cut him off, pulling the will from my bag and thrusting it toward him. Did you know about this? Did you know Mom left everything to me? He stared at the document, his face draining of color. For a moment he said nothing. Then he sank onto the couch, the fight going out of him all at once. Where did you find that? In the attic, where Mom hid it. She was trying to protect me, Ethan. She wrote letters. She was terrified Aunt Linda would try to take everything if something happened to her. And you let it happen anyway. He buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. You don't understand, Anna. I didn't want any of this. I was just trying to keep my head above water. I felt my anger flare. So you sold the house behind my back. You let strangers pack up our lives and you didn't even call me? You let Mom go to a care facility alone? He looked up, eyes red. I was scared. After Mom's fall, the bills just kept coming. Aunt Linda said she'd help, but only if I agreed to sell the house. She said it was the only way to pay for Mom's care. She promised she'd handle everything, that it was for the best. I shook my head, the betrayal cutting deeper. You let her manipulate you. You let her erase me from everything. You didn't even try to fight for what Mom wanted. He wiped his eyes, voice cracking. I know I messed up. But you weren't here, Anna. You left. I was the one who had to deal with the calls, the doctors, the bills. I was drowning, and Linda was the only one who offered a hand. I wanted to scream, to shake him, to make him see how much he'd hurt me. But I saw the fear in his eyes, the exhaustion, the guilt. He wasn't the villain I'd imagined, just a brother who'd made terrible choices out of desperation and weakness. Still, I couldn't let him off the hook. You could have called me. You could have told me the truth. Instead, you let me come home to strangers in our house. You let me believe I didn't matter. He looked away, shame written all over his face. I'm sorry, Anna. I really am. I didn't know what else to do. The room was thick with everything unsaid. Years of resentment, grief, and love twisted into something unrecognizable. I felt tears sting my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I wouldn't be the weak one anymore. I found Mom's will. I found her letters. I know what she wanted, and I'm not going to let Aunt Linda or anyone else take that away from me. I'm going to fight this, Ethan. I'm going to fight for Mom, for our family, for myself. He nodded, defeated. You should. I don't blame you. I wish things were different. I stood, gathering my things. So do I, but wishing won't fix anything. I'm done being left out. I'm done being silent. He watched me go, his apology hanging in the air, heavy and unfinished. As I stepped out into the hallway, I felt a strange sense of clarity. The betrayal ran deeper than I'd ever imagined, but I wasn't powerless. I wasn't a victim. I was stronger than they realized. Could I really reclaim what was rightfully mine? For the first time, I believed the answer might be yes. The next morning, I sat in a lawyer's office, the will and letters spread out on the polished mahogany desk between us. My hands shook as I recounted everything. My mother's wishes, my brother's confession, the years of secrets and silence. The lawyer, Ms. Patel, listened intently, her eyes sharp and kind, nodding as I spoke. This will is valid, she said, her voice steady. Your mother's intentions are clear. But your aunt and the buyers will fight this. Are you ready for a battle, Anna? I nodded, feeling the weight of my mother's hope and my own anger pressing me forward. I have to do this. For my mother. For myself. The legal process was a storm I hadn't anticipated. Aunt Linda hired the most aggressive attorney in town, and suddenly, every family skeleton was dragged into the light. She painted me as the absent daughter, the one who'd abandoned her family, while she, the devoted sister, had stepped in to save the day. The buyers, caught in the crossfire, threatened to sue for damages. My brother, racked with guilt, tried to stay out of it, but his silence spoke volumes. Court days were the worst. I sat on the hard wooden bench, my heart pounding as Linda's lawyer twisted every fact, every memory into something ugly. He questioned my motives, my relationship with my mother, even my right to grieve. There were moments I wanted to run, to let them have the house and the past and everything in it. But every time I faltered, I remembered my mother's trembling hand in mine, her whispered promise that I was the strong one. The humiliation was real. I heard the whispers in the grocery store, saw the sideways glances from neighbors who'd once watched me grow up. She's just after the money, some said. She left, and now she wants to come back and take everything. The loneliness was suffocating, but I refused to let it break me. Then, one afternoon, Ms. Patel called me into her office, her eyes alight with something fierce. We found something, she said, sliding a stack of documents across the desk. Your aunt forged your mother's signature on several financial forms. She manipulated the sale, pressured your brother, and lied to the buyers. We have proof. The shock was electric. All the pieces fell into place. The urgency, the secrecy, the way Linda had always seemed to know just what to say to get her way. My anger crystallized into resolve. I would not let her win. The next court date, Ms. Patel presented the evidence. The judge's eyes narrowed as he read through the documents, his tone shifting from polite to icy. Linda's lawyer stammered, trying to explain away the inconsistencies, but the truth was undeniable. The courtroom, once hostile, began to shift. I saw neighbors in the gallery, faces I recognized from childhood, their expressions softening as the truth came out. After the hearing, Mrs. Patel from across the street approached me outside the courthouse. She hugged me tightly, her voice trembling. "We were wrong about you, Anna. I'm so sorry." "Your mother would be proud." Others followed. Old friends, former teachers, even the buyers who apologized for their part in the chaos. The community that had once judged me now stood behind me. Their support a balm to wounds I hadn't realized were still open. But the fight wasn't over. The judge recessed to review the evidence, promising a final decision soon. I stood outside the courthouse, the autumn wind tugging at my hair, and wondered if justice would finally be served. The day the judge delivered his ruling, I sat in the courtroom with my heart in my throat, hands clasped so tightly my knuckles ached. The room was packed, neighbors, friends, even a few strangers who'd followed the story. My brother sat in the back, eyes downcast, while Aunt Linda glared at me from across the aisle. Her confidence finally cracked. The judge's words rang out, clear and final. The will was valid. The sale was void, and the house was to be returned to me. My mother's wishes would be honored. For a moment I couldn't breathe. Then relief washed over me, so powerful it brought tears to my eyes. I had done it, not just for myself, but for my mother, for the little girl who'd once believed family meant forever. Outside the courthouse, the autumn sun felt warmer than it had in years. People hugged me, congratulated me, and for the first time since I'd come home, I felt seen, not as a victim, but as someone who had fought for what was right. The house was mine again, but more than that, I'd reclaimed something I hadn't even realized I'd lost: my sense of self-worth. The first thing I did was visit my mother. She was weaker now, her voice barely a whisper, but when I told her the news, her eyes filled with tears of relief. "You did it, Anna," she murmured, squeezing my hand. "You made me proud." I sat with her for a long time, holding her hand, letting her know that her sacrifices hadn't been in vain. She could rest now, her heart at peace. Forgiving Ethan wasn't easy. The wounds he'd left were deep, but I saw the regret in his eyes, the way he struggled to meet my gaze. We talked, really talked, for the first time in years. I told him I forgave him, but I also set boundaries. I wouldn't let myself be erased again. He apologized, tears streaming down his face, and I saw the brother I'd missed for so long. We weren't the same, but maybe in time we could rebuild. As for Aunt Linda, the court's decision was punishment enough. She left town quietly, her power over us finally broken. I felt no satisfaction in her defeat, only a quiet resolve to never let anyone control my story again. With the house back in my name, I decided to open it up, just as my mother had always dreamed. I hosted a gathering for the neighborhood, inviting old friends and new faces alike. We filled the rooms with laughter and music, sharing stories and food, turning the pain of the past into something beautiful and lasting. Standing in the doorway that evening, watching the golden light spill across the faces of people I cared about, I realized that sometimes you have to lose everything to find your true strength. My home was more than bricks and mortar. It was a testament to resilience, to love, and to the power of standing up for yourself, no matter how alone you feel. And as I welcomed everyone inside, I knew I was finally home. Looking back, I never could have imagined that coming home would unravel my entire world. What began as heartbreak and betrayal became the hardest, most important fight of my life. I lost so much: my trust, my sense of belonging, even my faith in family. But in the end, I found something far more valuable: my own strength. Standing up for myself wasn't easy. There were days I wanted to give up, days when the weight of judgment and loneliness felt unbearable. But every time I thought about my mother's wishes, about the little girl I used to be, I found the courage to keep going. I learned that sometimes the people we love most can hurt us the deepest, but that doesn't mean we have to let their choices define us. If you take anything from my story, let it be this: know your rights. Trust your instincts, even when others try to silence you. Don't let anyone, no matter how close, erase your story or your worth. You have a voice, and you deserve to be heard. My journey taught me that justice isn't always easy, and family isn't always fair. But when you fight for yourself, you inspire others to do the same. You become a light for those still lost in the dark. Have you ever faced a family betrayal? Have you ever had to stand up for yourself when no one else would? Share your story in the comments. Let's support each other, because none of us should have to face these battles alone. Together we can turn pain into power and write our own endings.